Hey, y'all, I'm Shane Sams. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast today. I absolutely love doing this podcast for you. Each week, I interview the top influencers, authors, experts, and entrepreneurs anywhere online so you can get to know them better and understand how they achieved so much success and how you can take the lessons and knowledge they've picked up along the way and use those tips, strategies, and tactics to find success for yourself. Really excited today to introduce you to Pip Stehlik of pipspath.com. I met Pip a few weeks ago with this new live event venture that me and Jocelyn have joined. We are partnering with an amazing company called Oxlos. Oxlos puts on big live events, stadium events all around the country, and they also provide education training at satellite workshops around those big events. So at these events, you'll go and you'll see amazing speakers like Tim Tebow, big entrepreneurs, CEOs, and you'll also get to learn about things like stock market trading, real estate investing, physical brick and mortar businesses. And Jocelyn and I are partnering with them to teach about online business. Well, at a recent partner meeting, I got to sit with and hang out with and talk to Pip all about his real estate investing company. Pip has an amazing story. He's been everything from a stand-up comedian to a motivational speaker. He's built an incredible real estate company. He has over 50 people working under him, and he's working through Pip's path to teach people everything he knows about investing in real estate. He's on a mission to help real people become investors. One of the most amazing stories Pip told on today's podcast is about one of his students who got to 3 houses in her portfolio and how excited she was to reach that goal. So we're going to dig into Pip's story. We're going to learn everything about him. I talk a lot about the stand-up comedy because I'm super interested in being a stand-up comedian someday. I think I'm going to retire someday from podcasting and try to be a stand-up comedian. So I went down the rabbit hole of all the mindset things that he learned from 7 years on stages and comedy clubs all over North America. And we're going to talk a lot about sales. You know, everything you do in life, guys, is sales. Whether you're trying to sell to your wife or you want to go on vacation, or you're trying to sell your kids to try a new sport, or you're trying to sell your next customer into your business. Being good at sales is a critical skill you have to learn if you're going to succeed offline or online. We're going to talk about the number one thing you can do to prove your expertise, to prove you're the expert that your customer needs. We're going to show you how to get people to ask you questions and why getting your customer to ask questions is the most important thing you can do to get your next sale. And towards the end of the show, Pip is going to tell you his 10-step process for getting more sales in anything you do. Hey, y'all, Pip is a great guy, man. This is one of the coolest guys I've met in the last few years of my entrepreneur journey. I feel so privileged and excited that I get to introduce you to him today. I know we're all going to learn a lot from this show. So wherever you're listening today, if you're in the car or on the treadmill, turn that thing up. Or maybe you're hanging out at the house. Pour yourself a cup of coffee or a mason jar of sweet tea. Grab a notebook and a pen to take some notes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Pip, what's happening, man?
Shane, it's great to be here, buddy.
Buddy, we're going to have some fun, man. We're going to have a good time, man. We were just talking off air about how speaking is such an important part of what we both do and talking in front of people. And it's funny because you get out on these podcasts, you get up on stages, and you tell so many of the same stories over and over and over again. But you have to when you're publicly facing and you've got to have content, you've got to be out there, you got to get good enough to be able to tell your stories the same way every time so you don't lose your impact on the next audience. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I can give you even a whole different background. I did stand-up comedy for 7 years, Shane, and sometimes you do 2 shows, 3 shows in a night. And so if you weren't somewhat diligent about when you told your jokes and what order you told them in, you could do your second or third show of the night and literally say the same thing over. I mean, you have to say it 3 times in one night, but you might say it twice in the same 30-minute bit. And so it really was important because I saw comedians, they'd go up there and on the second or third show, within that same 30-minute time frame, they would say the same joke over, and people would look at them like, "Why'd you just say that again?"
I think like they forgot they told it in that set, exactly. So they got it completely mixed up. Oh, that's amazing. I never thought about that.
In the show before, which was maybe only 2 hours earlier, and so. Yeah, it's very important. I always make comments to everybody, my jokes are the same, but the audience changes. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah, Russell Brunson, we were at an event with him one time and he said something interesting. He was like, it's not that you have to constantly reinvent material or your pitches or your products, because what you really want to do is just take that on the road and show it to people who have never seen it before, who have never heard it before, because it's going to be just as impactful. And, Jocelyn, that's one thing that she hates telling the same stories over and over again, because she's heard them, she's done. I love it, because I'm always looking for that. Did that one verb or that one period on the end of the sentence, man? Or like, do I put the story that makes the crowd angry before or after the laugh? Like, where do I, like, to me, it's almost like drawing up football plays when I was a football coach.
Oh,
and it's like you're just constantly trying to tweak that one blocking scheme to get one more yard. And that's what I feel like when I'm planning talks,
I agree with you. And I mean, if that left tackle, takes one step left, is that going to change the angle of the block when, you're running that outside veer or whatever it is you're doing? But yeah, it's really interesting to see that. We did the same thing with comedy. And I know when we met a few weeks ago, we were talking about that. As comedians, you work in the evenings. You work basically maybe a 7 o'clock show and a 9 o'clock show or something like that. On a Friday, Saturday, you might work a really late show. But anyway, so you have all day long to do nothing. And you could either spend that time being productive, or you could spend it being, I guess, a bad person. But, as a person who wants to be productive, we would sit around and we'd have all of this is back in the 90s. So we had everything either typed out or written down on a legal pad kind of thing. So it wasn't like we did them on computers or, things like that, or we didn't have them on our phone. And so we would write all of our jokes out, or our bits, or whatever you want to call it, our stories. And then we would talk about them to each other. And then we'd say, do we want to put the emphasis on that word? Should we pause after this word? And so when you tell the same story, I always enjoy that, because I've been doing this now. I did stand-up comedy for 7 years, that I've been speaking all around the world for the last 15 years. And so with all the different audiences I've seen, I love to tell that same story and just change an emphasis on a word, change the verb, as you said, or whatever it may be, or pause longer. Sometimes I think we as storytellers, as speakers, we don't give the audience time to laugh. We don't give them time to process it. It's in our mind. We've heard it 500,000 times, whatever we have. We've practiced it. We've said it before. And we know when people are supposed to laugh. And if we don't give them time, sometimes they have the time to process it. Maybe they're thinking about, the kid's soccer game that they got to go to the next morning, or whatever they're doing. So it's so different when you're speaking and presenting versus when they're accepting the information. So I think a lot of times the error of many people is they got to just slow down and give people time to laugh.
Oh yeah.
I know a lot of speakers that actually laugh when they want the audience to laugh, because that then tells the audience, oh, this is the time to laugh.
Yeah.
So
it gives them permission, like you can slow it. And that's one of my, once you tell your stories or your whatever it is you're talking about, you do get faster. That's something you've got to really be disciplined about, is not to rush and try to talk. And especially when like sometimes I'll go speak and I'll have 45 minutes, and other times I'll have 35. And sometimes I get interviewed for podcasts and they're like 20 minutes. So I had to actually sit down and write shorter versions of my stories to make sure that when I looked at the clock and I was like, okay, well, if I start telling this story now, this story could definitely take 15 minutes. It could also take 5. And I've got to know, who am I talking to? What's the audience? How much time frame I've got to make sure that you can get it all in. And dude, I was listening to a podcast yesterday. It was fascinating. It was about communication. It was about neuroscience. And they were talking about the role of laughter, like in society and in our communication. And then they broke it down to the smile, right? Like even when you're telling your stories, like when you smile, like there's 2 actual kinds of smiles. There's a real smile that's controlled by your primitive brain. And then there's another smile that's actually controlled by the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex is the fake smile. It's the, hey, how you doing? I'm Shane, right? It's the, how you doing, Pip, right? And it's then the other one is the somebody got you tickled and you're smiling about it, But the funny thing is, like we can see that, we can know that, but when we tell these stories that originally we thought were funny, on your 479th time telling it, that prefrontal cortex kicks in. It's not really as funny to you anymore because you know what the punchline, and then that smile takes over, and you've got to like you have to really practice to keep the real smile in the story so that your audience doesn't like freak out on you. And I've been talking on Zoom now for 10 years. And I think that's helped me keep a little bit more of that, the primitive smile in some of my stories. Is because I'm doing it in front of the mirror. You know what I'm saying? I'm seeing myself coming back at me all the time. You know,
well, I would have bet $1 million we wouldn't be talking about the prefrontal cortex. I mean, if somebody would have asked me what I was talking about today, and I'm talking with Shane Sandstrom going, yeah, we're going to talk about the prefrontal cortex.
I go down weird rabbit holes on this, my podcast, man. I'm just like, making stuff up as I go.
Exactly. Well, what's the old sales trick or tool is to, when you're talking to somebody, if you're on the phone or whatever, is to put a mirror in front of you and smile while you're talking, because it comes through in your voice.
Yeah.
And most people don't realize that. And that is so true. And even if it's I don't know if you called it, whichever one of the smiles you called it, even if it's not even if it's the forced one, it still comes through on your voice. And I can say, man, Shane, I really don't like you. At least it sounds like I'm happy about it, if I'm smiling.
Right.
But if
it's a weapon if you use it right.
Exactly. But if I say, if I'm frowning and I say, Shane, I really like you, you're like, dude, are you being sarcastic? That kind of thing. So there's definitely a lot of the science and the stuff that goes into that. It's cool stuff.
It's cool stuff, man. Like the body and the mind itself can make or break us in everything we do. So how did you get into comedy? And then we'll move on to what you did next. Like, because I'm a fan of stand-up comedy, and I actually do like read books about it because I think it's made me. I'm a naturally kind of jovial guy. And like, so I wanted to harness that a little bit in what I'm doing with my professional career. But how did you actually say, I'm getting up on stage and I'm doing this for 7 years? Because that's kind of
want the short,
crazy
you want
job.
The 5-minute version, or you want the 10-minute version?
Sure, 7.5. We'll just meet me in the middle.
I have one of those, but so my partners and my wife always tell me that I am the master of making a short story long. So there you go. Anyway, and so when I was a little kid, I was the youngest of 6. And I realized pretty early that I could watch a cartoon and then do some of the voices from the cartoons. And so, the Bugs Bunny and the Elmer Fuds and those kinds of things. And so I would always watch cartoons with my older brothers, and they would, say, hey, Pip, go do this voice, or hey, Pip, do that voice. And this is from the time I was probably 7, 8, 9 years old. And so I thought that was pretty cool because I got to hang out with my older brothers and their friends. And I was kind of like the little, circus act that they'd bring in. Hey, Pip, come and do this voice. Hey, Pip, come and do that. And so that was cool to be able to be included in your teenage brothers' friends groups when you're 9, 10 years old, that kind of thing. Well, then the big break, or the big break, that's not a big break, but the big aha moment for me, I was 12 years old. My parents had an IGA grocery store growing up. So
we had one of those. Oh yeah, I went to the IGA many times.
That are our age or older remember IGA grocery stores. The kids don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. And so they had an IGA grocery store convention in Chicago. We lived in Nebraska City, Nebraska. That's where I was born and raised, so just south of Omaha. And we went to this IGA grocery store convention that summer. And I'll never forget my dad telling me, hey, we're going to go to an IGA grocery store convention. You're 12 years old, you're a boy. You're like, well, are we going to a Cubs game? We're going to right. All I want to do, I just wanted sports. That's all I was thinking. They're like,
you didn't want to see the meat vendors and all the independent grocers hawking tomatoes? Come on, man.
How much fun is this going to be for a 12-year-old boy? Anyway, so we went to this thing. Now, obviously, this is 1980, so it's a long time ago. So forget the fact that we don't know certain things, or remember that we don't know certain things. That first night, there were about 4,000 or 5,000 IGA retailers there from all over the world. And so that was cool that I met people from Australia and met people from Canada and China even, which was crazy. But anyway, long story short on that was the first night, their entertainer was Bill Cosby. And so I saw him perform for like an hour on stage, and I'm thinking, that's a job? This is something, because I was making my brothers and their friends laugh. So I'm like, that's a job? I can do that? That's pretty cool. So I thought that was really awesome. And then the following morning, I heard Lou Holtz. At the time, he's a college football coach. For those of you guys who don't know, he's retired now, and he's won multiple, a couple different national championships. But he just won a national championship at Arkansas. And I was a huge sports fan, just like you, Shane. I love football, basketball, baseball. When we used to all play all sports, that's just what we did as kids. Now my daughters, they play one sport and that's it. Now they're really good at it, but they don't play any other. I don't know why that's the way the world out, but it is what it is. And so I thought after hearing Lou Holt speak, I could run through the wall. That's how motivated I was. So I thought, how is there some way that I can garner these two skill sets, making people laugh and motivation, and put them into a presentation? Because I thought that was pretty cool. So obviously when you're junior high, high school, you have no idea how to motivate other people. I was constantly looking at, finding different quotes. I had my sophomore year of high school. One of my teachers came up and he wrote the quote of the day every day, and he wrote it down, and it was a motivational quote or by what president or a famous person. And I have a notebook to this day that I still have that I wrote down every quote every day that I was in there. And I thought, I just need to be motivation. I listened to Zig Ziglar tapes. I did that kind of stuff. And so then when I got into my first year at university, I'm going to the University of Nebraska, and I'm thinking, I got to figure out, is there a way I can maybe, make some people laugh? I'd done speech class in high school, but high school is really uncomfortable. So now I'm in front of like 30 people in my college first speech class, and teacher comes out, in the first week or two, we got to do a 5 to 7 minute speech and an informative speech. And so I walk up to the professor, and this is like 1980s. So he's got the corduroy jacket with the elbow pads on it, if you know what I'm talking about, smoking his pipe, because they could still smoke in the schools at that point. And so interestingly enough, I walked up to him and I said, hey, is it okay if I try to make this speech funny? And he's like, well, you can, but it could, if it doesn't go well, it could probably.
Yeah, that is a high risk reward strategy in any talk. You can play it safe with a lot of other emotions, but man, if you're trying to get a laugh, it may not land. Like that plane may not make the runway, And
so, and he was brutally honest. And so I got up. Now this was the mid 80s, and all the television evangelists were on every National Enquirer or whatever the tabloids are at the supermarket, where they were all, asking for money on Sundays and praising God. And then during the week, they were sleeping with prostitutes or whatever they were doing. And that was just a lot of the media of the day. And some of you are old enough to remember that. So I did a speech on television evangelism, and I got my best Southern preacher voice out for my introduction, because I did voices, and I kind of sounded like you is what I sounded like, Shane, when I started. People say I always sounded like Foghorn Leghorn. Boy, I'll say who.
I'll say who.
Yeah, and so I got up and I did my my first sentence or two, and I said, and if you want to be saved, let me hear you say, hey. And this dude, kid you not, did not know him, big kid in the back of the room, stands up and says, amen. And everybody starts laughing. And I'm like, that was the first time I'd written a bit and somebody really laughed at it. Yeah. And I went on to do that whole speech, and everybody gave me a bunch of laughs, which was kind of a double-edged sword, because every speech I did, I had to figure out how to keep getting laughs and be better than the last speech.
Yep.
By the end of the semester, the professor was asking his colleagues, the other English professors, to come in and watch my speeches, which was actually pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
And so that was where I realized I could write something, make somebody laugh. And so then I went to work at a restaurant that had a comedy club at it. The only reason I went to work there was because I could go to the comedy club for free after I got done working. I was waiting tables, slinging spaghetti for 3 or 4 hours every night. The restaurant was called Spaghetti Works. The comedy club was called Noodles Comedy Club. How cliche is that? And so I'd go up and I'd watch the shows every Friday and Saturday night after I get done working or waiting tables. And I finally got to know the manager. And so it's kind of like, that where you keep doing whatever you need to do to get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
You've been there. I know you've done that, in your life. And I kept doing all that. And finally, the manager of the club's like, Pip, why are you here all the time? I said, I want to be stand-up comic. I said, can I get on stage sometime? He said, oh, you could introduce the show if you want to. He said, I have to do it and I hate it. He says, I can't pay you. I said, I don't want to get paid. I want stage time. And so I went up in front of a comedy club, had my VHS recorder in the back, and I recorded the 3 or 4 or 5 minutes that I did on the first time, and people laughed. And so I just kept doing that over and over and over. So I got all these VHS tapes with all this material in front of a live comedy audience. Wasn't get paid a dime, but I had material now that I could send out to club owners. I could send out to booking agents. And then I started going around the country doing stand-up comedy. So that's how I got into it, and got out of it because the money wasn't as good as it could be. But we get more into that story, but that's how I got into stand-up comedy.
That's an interesting way though, because comedy is all about testing the bits and then tweaking the bits, right? Like making somebody making a lot of people, like Pareto principle comedy. Can I get the whole room to laugh? Like we're at 80%. That's what I'm talking about. Not getting somebody to laugh. But that's kind of a cool, safer way to do it. Cause I go to comedy clubs a lot, especially when me and my buddy we go up to New York, at least, before the pandemic, we used to go up once a year, catch a comedy show, go out to eat, whatever. And we'd go to the Comedy Cellar in New York. And we would go there, but the MCs of those comedy clubs are very important because they have to prime the guy. They need to kind of, give him a little laugh just to get it going. But that's kind of a cool thing. You're only up there for a couple of minutes. So you can try one joke, one bit, go sit down. You can even try that joke later in the night or another set later on, but you don't have to stay up there for the full 15. Right. And you can edit it together with only the good ones. You send out your sizzle reel to all the clubs so you can get on stage,
And that's exactly what I did. I mean, I got to the point where I had a solid 30 minutes and now I've got something that it wasn't ever me in the same shirt, for that 30 minutes on that sizzle reel, but that's okay. I've seen the football players in their, home and away jerseys and stuff, in their sizzle reels. But, that's the point is, you get that practice time. And I didn't get paid a dime to do so. It was a lot of time out of my life, but I met a lot of comedians. And I guess, for me, one of the coolest things was, how many cool people that I met, how many really interesting people that I met. And what I found out, it's not a cutthroat business. Everybody wants everybody to succeed for the most part. I think that's what and this whole stuff that we're going to be doing together, I know that's what I like about it is everybody wants everybody else to succeed.
Yeah, man.
And you see too many times in life, in business, that they got to push somebody else down to raise themselves up.
Yeah. And I've found that only hurts you. Like, I mean, man, I did not know because I came from the football coaching world where you wanted to beat everyone, period. You were only happy when they beat somebody you didn't like. Right. And two, man, they're paying coaches $300 to $500 for being assistants now. People will kill you for that kind of money. I mean, it was as cutthroat a world as I've ever experienced, But then when I came into entrepreneurship, especially online business, like that was really when I learned the concept of true abundance. I'm like, man, because my hometown has the first Kentucky Fried Chicken ever, right? And there's this amazing story of Colonel Sanders. And he had a gas station on one side of the highway, and it was where Sanders Cafe was. And on the other side, this guy opened up another gas station, and they were bitter rivals because somebody had to stop for gas. Which, if they stopped at the other guy for gas, you might go out of business. And then that guy apparently started cooking chicken or something, and they got into a gunfight across Highway 25, man. And I'm like, that's crazy, but like that's scarcity. I mean, you only have what you have on that road. But then when I realized, hey, wait a minute, online business, I might have my people that like me, but you might have your people that like you. And and the whole world is now our customer, right? And I'd say comedy is similar. Like if you got 3 people bomb before you, you're going to not have a great chance to go out there and win. So you need them to do well and you want them to do well so that you can do well. And there's momentum built within a show or on the road or whatever,
Momentum's in sports the exact same way. If you lose that momentum, you're going to lose the edge. And I know when I was first going at Noodles Comedy Club, the manager would get up and he didn't want to be up there. And he's like, hi, my name is so-and-so. Welcome to Noodles Comedy Club. Don't forget to tip your wait staff. Here's your first comedian. And these comics would walk up to what we call a cold mic. And there's no laughter. There's no time for somebody to have a drink or two of their adult beverage or whatever their situation may be. So the longer, not too long, but I mean, the more I made them laugh before the other comics got up, the better they ever would be. And it was always the goal to open a show and get an applause break. An applause break is a laugh that's so hard that everybody's like, oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I had a show in Denver and this guy was behind me. I was the first 15 minutes, and then he was 30 minutes or somebody else for 45. And so I opened the show and I got 3 applause breaks, and I come off the stage, and as I'm shaking my hand, the guy goes, that's the best opening I've ever had. 3 applause breaks in 15 minutes as I'm shaking his hand and he's coming up to the stage. So the more you can get that audience going, the better off everybody's going to be. And I think whether it's online business, I do it with property. I don't ever feel like I'm competing with people because there's always properties out there. There's different properties next week, next month, next year. There's partnerships that you can do. There's ways that you can promote each other. There's deals that you can do JVs on. So there's so many different variations of it. And I saw it in life so many times. In athletics, yeah, you want to beat the other guy, but you need to do it as a team too. I can't, not give the ball to my running back if I'm the quarterback and expect to win the game. I come from Nebraska. You'll appreciate this, Shane. Back in the 80s, it was all option football because of Tom Osborne and all that kind of stuff. And so our high school team, we ran a lot of option ball. And so I was the quarterback. And so if I'd keep the ball every time and not give it to my running back, just because I wanted all the glory, that might not be the best solution for to win the game. If the end was coming up to get me, I got to pitch that thing out to that guy. So, I mean, it's a team thing in everything that we do. And I think you learn that in athletics and in life. You can learn it pretty early.
Yeah, man. So comedy, you transition out of comedy and you do you go straight into real estate or do you go straight into sales? Like what happens after you come, because you've done so much. It's kind of like, it's amazing watching this trajectory of, and I can't wait to hear like how these comedy skills built. Like I know, like I had all this media experience when I was a kid because I was the producer for our high school's TV show. And it's funny because those media skills are what got me my first opportunity in football because I could edit highlight reels. And then so that skill translated. Then that skill translated. And then when I got to another place, I built a website for the football team. And then finally, when I get into online business, I see these weird skills that have no business transitioning do that. So what happens after comedy? What happened next? Sales, real estate?
No, I got married is what happened.
That's why you really got off the road. She said, you're not traveling anymore, Pip.
Amen. So. That's exactly. Well, I met my wife and I mean, no kidding, we're 6 months into the relationship. We weren't married yet. Obviously we were dating and I'm already, falling in love. For me, it was love at first sight. Now my wife, on the other hand, as I like to say, Shane, she was a bit of a slow learner. Took her like 3 years for her to really realize that I was okay.
Had to do her research. She's a researcher. Just say she's a researcher. That way she
exactly.
had to. That sounds better.
Anyway, and so 6 months into the relationship, she's asking me this question. She's like, Pip, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? We're having that romantic dinner. And I said, well, I want to be a stand-up comedian. She looks right at me. She says, Pip, I've seen your act. What do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I'm like, ow.
She's the comedian. That's what you didn't know.
Well, I look back and my mom and dad both had a lot of smart aleck comments all the time. So I get it naturally. There's no doubt about it. But I Jen and I wanted to get married. We dated for almost 3 years before we got married. We got married. And then I went back to work at the family-owned grocery business that I always told myself I'd never go back to. And so I got a bunch. I've got an undergraduate degree in business. I got an MBA, all that, plenty of traditional education. I only did it because I just knew that it never hurt to have knowledge in certain ways. Not that I was using it on the stand-up comedy, but then when I got back in the grocery business, my thought was this. My thought was, you know what? I'm not making a ton of money doing stand-up comedy. I know I can go in and I can control an audience. One of my goals was to be able to be some type of motivational speaker of some sort. I know I can control an audience through comedy, but I really can't motivate them to do anything when you really haven't done anything yourself. So my thought was, I go back to the grocery store. My dad's retired. It's my two brothers and I. So we're all, in our 30s at the time where we're like, I was in my 20s, actually. They were both in their 30s. I'm like, let's build this business as big as we possibly can. And then I can go out and people will want to listen to me talk because I've got this great business that I built. That was the goal. And we ended up with 3 stores. And we were doing great. And then Walmart starts just eating away at our business. And so this is 2002. We're trying to figure out, for us, it wasn't if Walmart was coming to town. It was when are they coming to town? And so we're trying to figure out every year our business is going down, 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 down. We ended up closing one of the stores. Then we ended up closing the second store. Now we only have 1 store. And so 2002, I see this ad for Zig Ziglar, big Zig Ziglar fan. And he was at a big show doing a big speaking engagement in Omaha. So I go to this engagement. There's 3,000, 4,000 people there. Well, one of the things I didn't know was that they were also selling products there. I heard Zig Ziglar speak. I heard Tom Osborne speak, who was the previous coach for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And I heard a lot of other cool people speak. Well, what they didn't tell us is that there was going to be these people talking about real estate, people talking about stocks, people talking about online businesses, all these kinds of things. There was a guy selling books on weight loss, a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
And so I heard this guy talk about real estate. And His name's James Smith. I think Shane met him down in Florida a few weeks back. Anyway, so James gets up and talks for, 45 minutes on property. And he's like, go to this training for 3 days and they're going to talk even more about property. And I paid the $99 to go to that 3-day training. And I ended up realizing that property might be a way that I could be very successful in business. And I also liked the fact that the guy that was teaching at the front of the room, I'm like, I could do what he's doing. That looks like a pretty cool gig.
Yeah.
And so we invested in ourselves, became real estate investors. Within 2 years, they were asking us to come back and mentor other students.
Nice.
And I looked the dude in the eye that was asking us to be a mentor because we got recommended by our mentor. And I said to AC, AC, I don't want to be a mentor. He goes, Pip, I've never been turned down. I said, well, it's not that I don't want to be a mentor, but I said, my wife says I talk better in front of 50 people than I do one-on-one. That's not a compliment coming from your wife, by the way. And so, and so she also says I look better in the dark. I don't think that's a compliment either, but hey, we won't even get into all that. And so anyway,
this is going to turn into we got to get the prefrontal cortex back out. This might become a logical marriage session here in a second, but
exactly.
The route we're going down, Pip.
And so anyway, I said, I don't want to be a mentor. He said, mentor for, I want to be a teacher at the front of the room. I want to be in the sales side of it. He said, mentor for 18 months, and then we'll talk about doing that. Well, you can bet at 15, 16, 17 months, I'm calling those guys saying, how do I become a speaker? And everything just kind of fell into place. And we had done a bunch of real estate. So we had the, what's the word I want to use? The credibility, so that I could then promote the product. It's no different than what you do. You did what you said. You did what you thought was a good idea. You thought was going to be a good idea. And now you're showing other people how to do it. It's the same concept.
I like the word. I love this story so far because there's a plague in our world today because two things are really cheap. It's information and the ability to put information out in the world. Like you can start a YouTube channel for free. Anyone can, and start talking about anything. And I see a lot of people encouraging people to go out and teach things that they've never done. Now, I'm not saying that you can't figure out how people did things. I know there's an academic component to teaching. I was a teacher for 10 years. I wasn't a historian. I was a history teacher, right? You know what I'm saying? I did some history research in college, and I learned the timeline. That's what I did. And I went and taught it to high school kids. So I get that there are people close enough to you behind. You want to reach back and help people who are a chapter back. But I do think in the entrepreneurial world, in the real estate world, anytime money is involved, you really do need to get your hands dirty. I mean, you got to pick up the shovel and swing the hammer before you start hiring the crew and teaching people how to build houses. You just do, because it's dangerous and it can hurt people if you tell them the wrong thing. Not if you tell them the wrong thing, but if you're just making it up as you go and you have no experience doing it. So I really respect that you're like, man, I'm getting my hands dirty. I'm doing this before I get up and start convincing people to do this. And that's a big deal.
I wasn't even smart enough. Yeah. When in 2002, when I started doing real estate and training, I'm thinking to myself, there's no way anybody would listen to me because I don't have that expertise. So I became the best investor I possibly could in a very short period of time. We were just making tons of offers and doing all the different strategies, from lease options to renovations to buy and holds to commercial property and in land development, and doing creative financing strategies on all those things. And so we were trying to be the best students we could possibly be, because I knew at that point that I wanted to be able to teach other people how to do it. And I said, who's going to listen to me if I don't have a portfolio of properties? If I haven't done this, I haven't done that, nobody's going to listen to me. And so I think there is some, I think there's huge validity to having that stuff behind you. Yeah. A lot of people think if you have a diploma on the wall, that gives you credibility. I'm glad that my doctors have gone to school. I'm glad that they've had internships. I'm glad that they've had residencies. And then when they go to operate on my knee, that I'm not the first knee that they've operated on. I get that. I mean, that's what it's all about. And so I think when you're out there, and so the process happened, and in 2007 they asked me to go out and start teaching, and I literally from 2007 to the pandemic in March of 2021, every couple of weeks I was somewhere in the world teaching people. I've now taught in 18 different countries. Wow. I've taught in on 5 different continents, and literally learned so much about people, about sales, and how to do things the right way. And what I did is I incorporated all the stuff that I learned in stand-up comedy in how to do a presentation and do it the right way by parsing those words down to the nth degree and listening. Good Lord gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. And if we use them in that ratio, we're going to be all right, because your customers will tell you with their questions what they want to hear and what they don't want to hear. And so my presentation over the course of the last however many years now, 15 years, has constantly developed based on those questions, those concerns, objections, if you will, from those students or customers. And that's how you develop the presentation. And I, to this day, I still am always tweaking and pushing this, pushing that in different directions, because I want to be able to see that. And so I'll never forget, when I started doing, and this is where.
And we're talking on-stage workshop presentations, some on-stage in bigger audiences too, of course. But we're talking a lot like 100 people in a room, and I've got to get up there and teach you these first steps to get you to the point where you're going to buy something at the end of this day or 2 day period or whatever.
These are 3-day presentations in most situations. I did some introduction stuff that were 2 hours. I've taught in front of 6,000 people, all the way down to 12 people. And I'd much rather not do 12 people, but I'd rather not do 6,000 either. I like that 100-person room, because 75-person room, because you can really get to know them over the course of that 3 days. And so in that 3-day time frame, what we're doing is we're teaching, we're motivating, and we're selling. And it may not even be in that order. There'll be times where, I always tell people, when you're talking, you're selling every time when I'm talking to everybody on your podcast right now, I'm selling. When I talk to my wife, my kids, people at church, people in business, I'm always selling. And it doesn't have to feel like sales. It just feels like I'm transferring information, which is actually what teaching is as well. And if we do it in a certain manner, it can become motivating. And that's what's so cool about what we do, is we can constantly do those processes over and over and over. So I was going, and this was kind of like a defining moment. When I went and heard Bill Cosby and Lou Holtz in 1980, that was defining moment one for me when it came down to what I wanted to do. Then in 2007, it defined my moment on how I wanted to do it. Yeah. Because what I saw, Shane, is I saw a lot of these trainers, and I'm not knocking any of them, and everybody's got to have their own style. And not everybody can have a Southern voice from Kentucky like you do. Right. And so we're all a little bit different. And so I was kind of funny, because Shane and I were talking about this before we got on the podcast today, was, how it's become a lot more like off the cuff a little bit, or unrehearsed when he does the podcast. The first ones he felt were very scripted.
I was like, I got to stay on the railroad track. I got to stay on the track. But now it's more like dirt roads.
Exactly. Well, I don't even think I'm on a road anymore, but that's okay.
We're just out in the grass, man. Yeah, we got a 6-inch lift kit on the truck, baby. We're just going to go wherever we want.
We're good. We're going to do some 4-wheeling here. But anyway, and so I'll never forget, because all the other people I saw doing this were wearing $50,000 watches, were wearing these fancy suits and fancy shoes. And I'm from a little town, farm town in Nebraska. Nobody did that. And if you did it, you would have been ostracized and outcast, because that was not who we were. What you're wearing is what most people wear every day where I come from. Yeah. Unless it's cold out, then they'll wear a hoodie or a flannel.
If you're listening instead of watching, that's a ball cap and a T-shirt, which is what I'm podcasting in right now. So
exactly, and that's really what it comes down to. My wife is like, you ought to wear your Pip's Path shirt. I said, okay, whatever. And so that's why I put this on for the day. But I don't, to me, it's about being who you are. And so I said to, the guys that were, owning the company at the time, I said, I don't think I can be that dude. I said, I won't buy a $50,000 watch, because even if I brought that home to my wife, she'd say, how many people can we help with that $50,000? Your cell phone has a clock on it. You really don't need a $50,000 watch. And it tells probably better time than your $50,000 watch. She's always, I hate when she's right, because she's right most of the time.
That's right. I got one of those wives too, man. Trust me.
I don't know.
I know how you feel.
Yeah. I don't know how I got that, but boy, every time she's right. And I'm like, you're right. Okay. And so I made the distinct decision that I was never going to be that guy who was trying to show you how great any business is. I want to be real. And so I had the opportunity to be an independent contractor for a long time, doing it my way. And I'll never forget, there's a lot of other people, not a lot, let's say 10 other people doing what I did around the world with this company. And they're like, you're never going to make it. And I ended up, and I'll never forget one of the other trainers. I said to him, he goes, Pip, what's your goal? I said, well, my first goal is to be the number one trainer in Canada. That's where I was started out, did a lot of training. I said, first, my job is the number one trainer in Canada. Then I started going internationally. I said that, then I'm going to be the number one trainer in internationally. And then I'm going to go back to the US and show them how to do it there. And I'm going to be the number one trainer in the US. And those are my goals. They may sound a little bit uppity or whatever, but why go out and do something and try to be okay? Yeah. Why settle for good when you want to be great? And so I ended up with all three of those titles. And what was cool about it is I did it without ever fancy cars, fancy watches, flashing big things. I look at it this way. Now that I've got the opportunity and we're going to be doing our own real estate education, is we want real people who have real expectations doing real work. Yeah, and if we get those people, we're going to, and that's really what it comes down to. I'm not going to overpromise anything. Yeah. When I heard you speak for the first time, and I'm paraphrasing if I say it wrong, if I could, I don't know how many times I heard you say, if I could just find 100 people to give me $50 a month, or maybe it was 50 people to give me $100 a month.
Either way will work. Math works both ways. That's right.
I wasn't sure which way that was, but I think it was 100 people to give me $50 a month. Yep. You can replace your salary at your job. Yeah. And that's what I tell people with real estate. If you just do one property a year, your life is exponentially going to change. If you do two, if you do two, oh my gosh, now we're, exploding our heads. And
I think what the problem with that is, like, so one, what I hear is, and I think that you can definitely trace this back to your stand-up comedy, like you have to be authentic, and so many people try to just copy other people. But if you're your authentic self, you're going to be infinitely more successful. Like the crowd will know if you're trying to tell a joke that's not authentically yours, and they'll feel it, that's not your life experience and your story. It's the same thing with selling. If you're not you, man, I mean, I remember when we started our podcast, Pip, we were so worried about our accents because all the people we heard on podcasts were like definitely trying to speak perfectly, or they were from California or New York or whatever, and they wanted to sound so smart. And we're just a couple kids from Kentucky, man. That's all we are. And I said, but we embraced it. And we said, and we finally, I remember the conversation. We were like, how can we embrace this instead of worry about it? And we said, we're going to start every podcast with, hey, y'all, there's going to be no doubt on the authenticity of who you're walking into when you hear Shane or Jocelyn Sams say something. And then at the same time, when you get out there and you get on the road and you get in front of people, like if your expectations aren't true and real, and they're aligned to real people, like we hang around with a lot of entrepreneurs, we hang around with a lot of really successful people. You can break your brain on what actually is expectations. I got into an argument with a really popular online marketer one time on Facebook because they were talking about how, like, if you didn't want to make seven figures, if you didn't want to go out and, hit XYZ, Lamborghini, whatever, they were like, why even try? And I'm like, bro, some people want to make $100,000 and raise their kids. That's what most people just want to have more control over their life, and they want to have a little more success. And if you start going down the inauthentic way, and you start preaching this is the only way you can ever do anything, you're going to isolate all those people who are like, man, I'd love to get into real estate, but I don't want to have 100 doors. I just want to have like 6 rentals and take care of some people and make sure that single mom can have a place where she can rent like that. And you have to align yourself with that, because most people want that. They don't want the other thing that we're sold sometimes on stages.
Everybody wants to sell the big dream of, the fancy cars and all that. And the average person, we could talk about it a million different ways. They just want to be able to take care of their family and hopefully give their kids a better childhood than they had.
Yeah. They want less worry. They don't want more stuff. Right. And that's what business and entrepreneurship, real estate can give you, is that peace of mind, that less anxiety, that less worry. And I don't know where in the world we have gotten on this path of, if you're not making 7, 10, 8 figures or whatever, that you're not successful. And I think we gotta dial that in everywhere,
Well, and I think we just, unfortunately, there's just been too much media out there promoting that, and I'm not knocking them, because, good for their success is that Kardashian.
Hey, so if that's your goal, I am never going to take someone's dream from them. I mean, whatever, dude, let's go. All right, fine. Here's that path. But whatever, the other people don't want that,
I got a couple of students who their goal is to have $1 billion portfolio.
Yeah, that's fine.
And they're a third of the way there in 3 years, 4 years now, 3.5 years. And so, but the average student, and I don't even get excited. I mean, I get excited for them because they're doing a great job and they're great guys. Don't get me wrong. But I'd much rather I get an email from, and I'm going to put her name out there. Her name's Sylvia from New York City. She sends me an email and she's I'm going to say late 50s when I met her. And she's like, Pip, I just bought my third house and who would have thunk I could have done this?
Yeah, man.
That was her mentality. And she says, it's going to totally change my life, my kid's life, and more importantly, my grandchild's life.
That Bible says that's an inheritance for your children's children right there.
Amen to that. That's really what it comes down to. And I think it's interesting because I don't care. So the company that I used to contract for, they go to New York City. It's a big market. Don't get me wrong. There's more people there than any place in the United States. But they would always have problems getting results there. And nobody wanted to go there. Well, of course, when I come back to the U.S. in 2016, 2017 and starts doing stuff, where's the first place they send me? New York City.
New York City.
And which is fine. And I have no problem with that. And I go there and the numbers are really good. And they're like, well, what? And they go, why is your number so much better than other people? I'm a guy from a small town in Nebraska. I'm sure they really are, think that's cool. They don't, what do they call it? I'm in one of the flyover states is what I am when you're from New York City. And so they're like, how do you do that? I said, you speak to them just like you speak to every other group and the real people. I don't care. You can live in New York City, San Francisco, Vancouver, Sydney, Australia. It doesn't matter to me. And the same thing happens. A vast majority of people just want to get a little bit further ahead than where they're at right now.
That's
because
right.
To do the $1 billion portfolio that these guys are doing, guess what they're doing? They're sacrificing a boatload of time, which is fine. But that's what it's going to take if you want to get to those levels. I really resonated when I heard Shane speak for the first time. He's like, I need 100 people, give me $50. Let's keep it simple. Yeah. It's a great goal. And it's a doable goal. It's the same way with property. If I can show you how to do 1 or 2 properties a year, your life is going to change exponentially. And more importantly, just like Shane talks about with his business, we want to do it with the least amount of effort on our part. We want to leverage other people's time, other people's money, and we want to not be worried about, in our business, toilets, tenants, and trash. Yeah. And if I can do that, because I know when I got into property, what was the first thing I thought? Oh, I got to worry about tenants. I got to fix toilets, all this kind of stuff. And if we do it the right way and you use the right systems, those are things that you don't worry about anymore. Nobody's calling me to come fix a toilet. Yeah. We have toilets that need to be fixed every month or probably every week. Amen. Yeah, we do. But that doesn't mean Pip's going out there and fixing them. In fact, my wife would laugh even if I tried to fix a toilet. But that's a whole other story.
I think too, I want to go back to the sales thing. Because I think there's a really important nugget of truth here. So if we all we all sell, most of the people listening to this are going to be entrepreneurs, online business owners. I don't care if you're an author, you might be an author out there listening to this, whatever you are, but you're selling. But you said something really interesting. One, we've established, be authentic. 80% of the people in your room don't. Now, I'm not saying also don't tell the big stories. We have people in our community that have done amazing things. But I remember when we hit 1,000 members for the first time, we talked about it on a podcast, and someone told me that made them getting to 100 real. Because they're like, I don't need 1,000, but it was like, if they can do that, well, I can do 10 times less than that. It made it almost more attainable for them to get their first 100. So those stories are important. I don't want to discount them. It's just don't base your whole life on the one big thing, right, that you do. But we've established that you have to be authentic. You need to be you. You don't have to copy anybody. It's probably going to be better if you're just you anyway, because you're going to attract the right people. But you said something really interesting about how getting people to ask questions, right, is so important. And we had a live event in 2018 called Flip Your Life Live. And I said something on stage, dude, that was not even planned. It was a throwaway line. And the crowd gasped. And I saw 100 people, almost to a person, look down and write this down. And I don't even remember the presentation I did it in. I have to go back and watch it. But I said, everybody is one question away from giving you money. And the whole room just stopped and looked down. And that impacted me so much that when the next workshop that we did in 2019, we had another 100 people coming in. I changed the entire format of my workshop to where every 60 minutes we had a 30-minute Q&A. Because I was like, if I really believe that, I'm going to let people ask me questions. I'm not just going to talk. I'm not just going to present. I'm not just going to do that. So like go a little deeper on that. Like what do you mean by that? Where do these questions come from? How do you get people to ask you the questions? And is it something strategic to get people to reveal the objections? Like, why is it so important to stop and let our customers and audience ask us questions instead of just teaching and preaching all the time?
Well, I think the main reason is it shows your ability to answer the question, because I know people don't take questions because sometimes they don't know the answer. And so it almost gives you a credibility scenario. The other thing I think we need to do is let our students win, let our customers win. If they feel like, all we're doing is preaching and teaching to them, and that everything they've done is wrong, then they're going, what the heck? What's up with that? I go back to a very simple concept. When I started to do property, guess what you need when you do property? You need money or credit. Actually, you need both generally, one or the other, definitely. And so I didn't have either one. My wife was a stay-at-home mom, and I was making $36,000 a year in our grocery business. So our combined income was 36. Now, we're not talking 1952. Some of you are looking at me going, well, out in the 50s, that was a lot of money. No, I'm talking 2002, 2003. And so I needed money to do deals. And so one of the first things you do, you go and ask, everybody always asks their parents for money. And your parents are really good at playing this off. And this I learned from my parents. I when I got in this business, my dad, one of the first people I asked for money was him. And he's like, I don't know, that seems kind of risky. And so then I went and I, did what all kids do. I asked my mom, and because that's what kids do, is they ask dad, then they ask mom, or vice versa. And when you're a parent, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so when I asked my mom for the same thing, she's like, well, what did your dad say? So that's parenting 101, is to put it off on the other parent, I guess. So I do it to this day. I'm like, well, what did your mother tell you? And they're like, well, this is what she said. Well, then that's what I agree with your mom then, because you don't want to get into that discussion. But anyway, right. And so the one thing I realized a long time ago, if you start asking people for money, and this may be a little too PG for everybody, but as soon as you ask people for money, you can just almost hear their butt cheeks just squeeze together. People are backing up and they're, oh my gosh. And that's just the way we are. And so what I learned a long time ago is what I call the Jerry Maguire mentality. And in the movie Jerry Maguire, they talk about show me the money. So what I will do is I will send, and so if I'm asking for money, or if I'm talking to people about what they want from me, I want to ask them, tell me your expertise. What do you think of this? So if I'm sending a deal to you, Shane, I'm going to say, Shane, could you give me your opinion? Everybody's got an opinion. And can you give me your opinion on this? And what I'm telling Shane is really, I want his money, but I never ask him that question. Shane, can you give me your opinion? And as you just said, you're one question away from people giving you, I don't know exactly how you said it, but it's so true. I want your opinion. And if I can show you the money and the deal is good, then you're going to say, well, how do I get involved in this deal? And it's no different than we're standing on a stage selling our program. We've got to have our students saying, man, that's something I can do. I believe that you have the expertise because I've asked you the question, Shane, and you've answered every question that I had. So I think you've got the credibility. You've got proof of concept because you've been doing it for a long time. You've got other customers that are saying great things about you, whether they're, the coaching lady who's making millions of dollars, or the chicken, farmer, or the whatever That's over right. in San Diego. I mean, you've got all those different levels. And I don't know what the chicken farmer over in San Diego makes, but even if he makes an extra $2,000 a month, I know I got one daughter in college and another one on the way there. That would pretty much pay a year's worth of college just like that. Do we have to make the chicken farmer a 10 millionaire? No, if we can just get him or anybody, it doesn't matter what you do, one more, income source, whatever that is. And I think, and I've talked to Shane about this, I need to do more what he's doing, plain and simple. And I'm sure he would say, I probably could do some more properties too. So there's 100%. Always that concept of you're never competing.
But you won't know that without the questions. Like, we don't know that until we sit down, and it's like, I went to the bank the other day, and I hope this guy doesn't ever listen to this because they know what we do. But like, I got in there, and I did not get to speak for 45 minutes. He didn't ask me one question, didn't let me ask any questions, just started talking, never got me out. Now, the only reason I sat through it is because I was looking at changing some stuff, the way our bank accounts technically work. They have another interface. That's all I wanted. Just all I wanted, and I had some questions about that. And I probably could have I would have agreed to pay the $500 a year for it 5 minutes into the conversation if I could ask 2 questions, right? Because he was trying to show me what he wanted to know, but I needed to know his expertise in this area, and he didn't let me ask the question. He almost lost a sale. I about walked out. I swear I did. I about got up and left, and because all I wanted to do was ask a couple questions. Literally told him that, and but if he had just said, "How's this?" Yes. Oh, you answered my question. You're the expert. I will trust you. Here's my money. Right. The second thing that I picked up there too is I've never heard anyone frame letting the customer ask a question as a win for them, because the win, a lot of people are coming in and they're scared and they don't know the answer and they have a problem and they can't even frame the question properly. Sometimes they need to be able to talk them. But that is a huge win, just to be able to ask that question and get the answer. And I'm thinking about that because I have a Q&A today with my community. At 1:30, I got, dozens of people will log in and ask me questions. But the reason they like it so much is because they feel like it's a win for them. It's like they're not stuck. They're not constantly in the state of being beat down and losing. At least they get to ask the question, right? So that is a huge win for them, and that and vice reciprocity, And then also the opinion thing. That's interesting too. Like, everyone has an opinion. Isn't a question kind of is a part of their opinion emerging, and it allows them to be heard. You know what I'm saying? So that's actually really interesting. A way to think of questions is, hey, everyone's got an opinion. Everyone loves to share their opinion. We're all on Facebook. We know this. Let them share their opinion so that they feel like they're a part of the conversation, not just being sold to.
And I don't want to get off on this tangent, but think about the news. Today, the news is all opinion. It's opinion journalism. It's opinion sports. Sports talk is all opinion. And there's nothing wrong with that. It obviously sells because it's become very popular. We teach some stuff on sales training, not just real estate, because really we're all in sales. And I've always, my concept when I talk about sales to people is sales has a 10-step process. And people are like, that's a lot of steps. Well, let me break down the 10 steps for you right now. The first 5 are ask questions, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Those are the first 5. And the second 5 are support, 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 support. If I do both of those things, I will get clients. I will retain clients. And more importantly, people will pay for the information, because Shane said something that is vital. And I say it every time I talk to an audience. Information is free.
Yeah.
Free. I can go online to YouTube University, YouTube anything I want. Anything I want. I can use
anything you think you can teach is being taught for free on the internet somewhere in this day and age, period.
Think about that for just a second. The information age has made everything free, but the difference is one word. It's that support.
Yeah. How do you find what you need when you need it? You need somebody to guide you that way.
And that's why, what we do through our company, and Shane's seen this, is it's a lifetime support. I got classes where I've taught where I literally have 1,500 emails from one class, because you ain't going to go on to YouTube University and get an answer from an expert, because they don't, first of all, they're not going to answer questions. And the sad part about it is if you watch any of the chat rooms on any of the online things, those chats go in directions that, you think Shane and I go down rabbit holes. Some of those chats aren't even, then they start talking about all kinds of other stuff. And so I think what you have to understand is sales is really listen, ask questions, whatever you want to call it, or support. Yeah, and if you do both of those things, if that banker had just asked a couple of questions.
Yeah, he would have got out of there early. He would have got to go home from work early that day too. Daggone it. But I love that word support, man. I'm going to change something. I just wrote this down. I'm going to change something in all my sales copy language. Well, we have a lot of things like instant access, or like, when we're on the road at workshops, we usually sell a lifetime access package. I love that concept of lifetime support. Support is the way to go. Like we changed a long time ago to we sell content, but it's curated content. It's in a path, like Pip's path. This is the order. You can go find all this stuff somewhere, right? Like I sell, I have a company called ushistoryteachers.com, and I sell schools, lesson plans, curriculum. I wrote my own textbook basically. And me and my brother did. And all of it's in there. You can, I promise you can Google what number President Abraham Lincoln was. But if you want it day by day by day in a curated path, and you want support in what you need to get in your classroom, you're going to have to come in there. I'm going to change the word. Dude, listen, we're going to go down. we're going to talk forever, but I'm going to have you back, and we'll just keep going down this rabbit hole. But me and Pip, man, we're going to be, I'm going to be seeing Pip. We're going to be on the road together. We're going to be hanging out together. We've been working in this amazing Life Surge company I've been talking to you guys about. And, but I wanted to Pip real quick before we go to tell you where to find him. If you want to learn about real estate, if you want to get your mindset in order, if you want to learn about sales training and stuff like that, Pip, where can everybody find you online?
I'm a pretty easy guy to find. When you have a unique name, everybody can find you. You can go to pipspath.com, pipspath.com. And I know this is going to sound terrible because somebody like, you really give out your email. My email is pip@pipspath.com. So anybody can find me. I did a podcast for somebody in Canada 2 days ago, 3 days ago, whatever it was. And they couldn't believe I gave out my personal email. Well, because I know that the only way to change other people's lives and change your own lives is to help each other out. Zig Ziglar said it better than I ever could. If you help other people get what they want, you're going to get everything that you want. And so I'm here to answer questions. And if I don't know the answer, whether it's about property, whether it's about sales, I'll find the right person within our company to do that, because we've got 58 people that work with us that are all experts in different areas. Because if you ask me about mobile homes, I'm going to go, huh? I'm going to look like I smelled something bad, like, I don't know anything about mobile, but I have somebody that does know something about mobile homes and does that. That's what they do for a living. If it's commercial property, Airbnb, or short-term rentals, we've got experts in all those different areas. So shoot me an email, go to pipspath.com, and you can see what we're all about.
All right, guys, that wraps up my interview with Pip Stehlik. Man, we could have talked forever. I may have him back on the show so we can go farther down the rabbit hole on real estate and sales. My wife, Jocelyn, and I had the amazing privilege of hanging out with Pip for a few days, and his awesome wife. We got to hang out together. We got to eat meals together. We got to speak on stage together. And I just love what he's doing over at pipspath.com. So make sure you check that out if you're interested in real estate and sales. And also, thank you so much for listening to the Shane Sam Show today. If this podcast brings you value, please do me a favor. Head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. Make sure you type in a paragraph of how much you love the show. I read every single one of those reviews, and that feedback gives me the motivation to keep making this show for you every single week. Also, don't forget to subscribe and download a few episodes no matter what podcast app you use. And if you think a friend would love the Shane Sam Show, shoot them an email with the link, or maybe share this on your social media network of choice. And finally, don't forget the Shane Sam Show is brought to you by flippedlifestyle.com and the Flipped Lifestyle community. That's my community where I help people start, build, and grow online businesses using the power of membership websites. All you need is 100 people to give you $50 a month to make $60,000 a year, or 200 to make 120. So if you're interested in starting, building, and growing an online business, if you want to make money online, check out everything we have to offer over at flippedlifestyle.com. That's FLIPPED lifestyle.com. All right, guys, that is all the time we have for this week. Whatever dream you are chasing, until I see you again, get out there and be consistent, be prolific, be relentless. Pick up your stone, cast it out upon the waters, and cause many ripples. We'll see you then.